Thank you for joining us today for our social media seminar. This is the first in our series for this year. My name is Matt Fazio. I run the communications department here at Donnelly-Boland. If you have been at literally any of these in the last 10 years, I've really helped facilitate them. In today's seminar, we have Anna Getz presenting. Anna has been with us for over 3.5 years now, and everything that she talks about today, she actually does for our company. All the social posts, email communications, newsletters, content strategy, all of that is implemented by Anna. One of her real strengths is the fact that she has a great understanding of consistency of brand and consistency of posting. And that's something that's definitely going to come across in today's session. So for today, this seminar is going to be about an hour in length. We always like to be respectful of people's time. And although this is going to be recorded and sent out so that you could watch it in the future if you missed anything, the real benefit of attending these seminars live is to make it interactive. So there are two places for responses that you can find at the bottom of your screen. So if you just take your mouse and scroll over the top of it, there are two different things. There's a Q&A pod, and there you can ask questions. Anything that you want, anything that comes up, anything that you're dealing with. If something doesn't come up and you still have a social media question, ask it there. And either I'm going to answer it because I'm going to be kind of managing the Q&A pod during this session, or sometimes I might interrupt Anna and say, hey, this is a really good question. How about you handle this one right here, Anna? And then there is also, in addition to the Q&A pod, there is also a chat pod. Throughout this session, Anna is going to be asking some questions and looking for some responses from all of you, so you can type them into the chat pod. And also, if you just have something that's not a question, but you kind of wanted to add on, or maybe some of your experiences or something, feel free to do that. Like I said, one of the things that makes this session live so much better than just watching it later is that you can talk about your business, things that you're going through, challenges, struggles, the things that you actually need support with. You can ask those right here. So I really want to emphasize how appreciative we are to have you all here today. I really think this is a great seminar and something that can be useful immediately. Really what we want to do is, this is 1 hour of your time, and what I'm looking for is at the end of this, I want you to have a better understanding of your business's social media, understanding the next steps that you want to take, and look at these takeaways and say, at 10 a.m., I know more now than I did at 9 a.m. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Anna.
Right. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for that introduction. Like he said, my name's Anna, and I work with him at our communications department at Donnelly-Boland. And I really like this presentation because, kind of piggybacking off of Matt, immediately you'll be able to use this. And not only will you be able to immediately use it, this kind of applies to anywhere you are on your social media journey. You'll learn new things, even if you're not a part of your social media, or if you already handle it. You're going to get some new free resources, or if you haven't taken the plunge, I think that today will kind of give you a really good roadmap of where to go from here and how to elevate your social media campaign and make it work better for you. So I'm just going to hop right in and start sharing my screen with all of you. And Matt talked about this a little bit, but here at Donnelly-Boland in our marketing and communications department, we really work on everything that falls under the marketing and communications umbrella, meaning, everything from graphic design to newsletters to social media marketing, event planning, all of it. So we've definitely seen it all, and we do provide these clients we provide these services for clients of our own. And more often than not, when people are coming to us, they're either needing a tune-up of their social media marketing, or they're starting from scratch and they really have no idea what their first step should be. So what we're going to cover today is going to be helpful for anybody along the whole spectrum of wherever you are, professionally, or if you're completely outside of your company's social media, and will be better for it after. So there's going to be 3 things I really want to touch on today. Overall, that are just gonna, like I said, lay out a better roadmap for you guys to start. I want to talk about measurable goals for your company, redefining your audience, possibly again, doing some research on your industry's typical audience and the platforms that they're on. And then I'm going to go over, of course, content, talk a little bit about content calendars, why you should be using them, what kind of content should you be focusing on, and furthermore. Before I really hop in, I just want to talk about the importance of social media as a whole. Why is it necessary? Most of the time that we see with small businesses and nonprofit organizations, with a limited budget and resources, social media can really get pushed to the side as a priority. And it really makes sense because sometimes we don't think that the social media is the first thing on our list. I mean, we're less than a week at this point, I think, from tax deadlines. So maybe there's some things we need to think about a little bit more. And then we're always trying to get just the next big thing crossed off our list. And so without the resources needed or the personnel needed, this can really get pushed on the back burner quickly and just become inactive. But I think that, some of these specific statistics that I have really can illustrate why it is such a big deal and why it is so important to make it a consistent part of your business plan. In January of 2021, there was 4.66 billion people active on social media. And the next statistic is a little bit biased, but I understand it that 73% of marketers believe that their efforts through social media have been either somewhat effective or very effective to their company. And I think that the somewhat effective comes from how many different changing algorithms we have now, how we have to stay on top of a lot of different things. So, but nonetheless, it's definitely helped the business regardless. And then 54% of social browsers are using their social media to research products that they're consuming. So definitely important to take it along the way. Sometimes we have to know why we're doing things before we start them. And the first thing that you're going to do as well before you start kind of laying out your roadmap and getting a better plan in place for your social media campaign is laying out some goals. And what I mean by that is specifically measurable goals. And that might mean anything from, let's say, 500 to 1,000 followers more on maybe your most active platform in 6 months to a year. Maybe you want to see better click-through rates going to your website from some LinkedIn articles you regularly post. You want to see some better traffic and you want to see a better return on your investment that you've put into all of your social media and all of your hard work. Putting some goals in place that you can come back to at the end of any period. It could be 6 months to a year, but that just helps you understand what was working for you and what wasn't working for you. Maybe you integrated a new campaign or a new platform and you saw great results. Perfect. Continue down that road. Maybe you integrated something new and you're not seeing really any traction from it, even with your consistency and good efforts. Maybe it's time to change lanes a little bit. We need to reevaluate. Always in social media and kind of going on this journey with your business or your organization, you're going to have to reevaluate a lot, but keeping measurable goals in place is the perfect first step for this, and it will always help you. And then with goals, you need to talk a little bit about the time allotted, how much time you realistically have, and the personnel that you either have that can be assigned to this or are already in charge of this. And maybe we need more support. Maybe we need more people. So, being really realistic about thinking about what goals you want to put in place, what return on investment you want to see, what results you want to see come out of 6 months to a year. You have to evaluate how much time it's going to take and how much money it's going to take with your organization. You have to really be really realistic with yourself. How much of your organization's budget are you willing to allocate to these endeavors? Because social media does not require ad dollars, because as long as you're not sponsoring your posts, they're free. It doesn't matter because you're still spending a lot of time with your employees' time on that. So think about it as maybe 8 hours of somebody that's not really in charge of your social media, but you've kind of allotted them to it. That's going to cost a lot more money than anything else. So making sure that, the money is spent right with your employees' hours, and then making sure you have the right people on your team. Who do we need to hire on? Who is in charge of this? Have we put somebody in charge of our social media campaign? Do we need to hire on more support, or do we need to outsource? Social media can turn into a full-time gig, absolutely, and it can happen quickly. So just being really realistic about the approach you want to make, but also keeping in mind the budget you have, and what your company can really afford is the first step for anything with your goals. It's going to coincide with them to actually get them done. And a lot of times, unfortunately, it seems very self-explanatory, but small businesses never do this in the first place. So without doing this in the first place, they really get behind, and they never have a clear, any clear dedicated roles, or, they're not really gaining any traction on their social media. I use Matt as an example, of course, but what if I said that Matt is, oh yeah, we totally have somebody that handles our social media. Matt takes some pictures at our events sometimes. And then you look at it on their page, and it's like every 4 months or something, we have like one picture. So, no, you don't really have somebody working on your social media. The effort is good, but, you have to reevaluate from there.
I actually think that one of the things that a lot of small businesses run into is that because people use Facebook, let's say, for example, personally, and they have their own Facebook page, and they know how to post on Facebook, they think, we got it, we can handle it. But it's like saying, just because I can start a car, that means I can fix an engine. No, you can't. And there are those inside tactics that what might be taking you 5 hours is going to take a communications professional an hour, or someone who's a little bit more adept at photo editing, something that's taking you several days to come up with a couple posts. This is actually done very, very quickly. So there are a lot of things you have to figure out where you want to allocate your time. And I think that Anna did a good job at really highlighting that.
So I actually want, before I move on to the next slide, I'm actually curious, and I want everybody here to drop an answer in the chat pod for me, please. But how many people here are either in charge of your organization's social media, or are you not involved in it at all? Just take a couple seconds quick to drop that in the chat pod. Even if you're not involved, you can let me know. See, perfect. Give us a couple more seconds, get a couple more answers in. So we definitely have a good mix here, which I like to see for sure. Involved, yeah, awesome. And like I said, I already said this before when I was doing the introductions, but no matter what your involvement looks like in your organization, if you only help out a little bit with your social media, or you're completely managing or overseeing it, I think that will have a lot of good points and strategies to kind of take home with you today. So once you are, kind of laying out a better, you're doing working on some of the internal tactics on what do we want to see in maybe a year from now? Who's actually going to take care of this? And is it going to be a communications professional to maybe lessen our time and just make it effective for the organization as a whole? You need to think about what your industry's target audience is, your ideal audience for your industry. So who does the average customer look like? What does their aesthetic and theme look like? And I'm going to talk to you about this in a little bit. I'm going to actually show some website comparisons to illustrate this a little bit better. But then you want to also think about how you can help them as an industry leader, and how to build trust in your industry, and really help your audience by answering some of their questions that they need. So I'm actually going to do a new screen share really quickly. And I want to pull up, this is actually our sister company. They're called the Alliance for Infants and Toddlers, and they are an early intervention service agency for children with developmental concerns. So with that, I mean, already with the screen, you can get a feel for what they're trying to illustrate here. It's very light, it's bright, it's cheerful, you know, it's comforting. We have a video with a lot of great imagery, you know, it's happy. And this is for, you know, parents that are coming to this page that have a lot of questions about their children's development. So right off the bat, they're hitting a great mark with this and hitting all the right feelings that they want to. And then on the opposite end, this is a tech startup that's in Pittsburgh. It's on self-driving. And we know that there's a different feel to this. It's more serious. It's a little bit more mature and edgier because they don't have the same audience that's coming to the Alliance. This is possibly people that are interested in this startup. Maybe they want to invest in this startup and learn a little bit more about it. It's not the same audience. And so thinking about it, I think a lot of people try to jump onto a website as soon as they can, and they want to just get the information out there. That's the most important thing to them, is just to get the information out there, nothing else. We'll worry about everything else later. And unfortunately, I mean, hitting the right aesthetic of your audience is huge, because that is your first impression you're ever going to make. Switching those two websites, if the Alliance looked a little bit more like that Aurora tech startup, it just wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't hit any of the right feelings that we're trying to capture with those new parents that are a little bit concerned and they're nervous, you know, rightfully so. So that is why creating the right feel is such an important first step, and it's often overlooked. And I think that overall, no matter everything we talk about today, I want to note that social media, your campaign, is a gradual process. And we want to think about it as a destination sometimes when we want to see really fast results. So we're thinking, okay, well, you know, I put some measurable goals into place. You know, I'm going to revisit in 6 months. I have so much to do. Let's just start self-promoting as much as possible. And I don't want to say that this is, you know, I don't think that rookie is a really nice word, but, you know, it's not the best route to go down. And the reason why it actually can show very little traction with your engagement and your followers over time.
You know what, Anna, we actually had a really good question. I think it was from the last slide, but I think it's worth talking about. Are there any website builders you recommend?
I would say starting small, especially if you're a small business, Wix or WordPress, those are definitely some great website builders that you can start with. And they're definitely intuitive for, I think, anybody that works in social media or not. I don't know if you had anything to add to that, Matt, but I would say those would be like my 2 top choices.
Yeah, so just a tiny bit of background. About, I want to say about 8 or 9 years ago, I did a deep dive into like what site builders people use. And at the time, things like Squarespace and Wix, they simply were not very good. They were okay, but they had so many limitations. But now you can actually code in them if you want. So you can do all the easy stuff. But if you want to do some unique and different things with them, you actually can do those things too. So we often recommend Wix for people that we do work for, because we build it on Wix and then we ship it to them so that they can manage it later. Whereas if you do something on a code only type of website, you can't pass that off to people who don't know how to code. So and then there are plugins with WordPress that make that very, very simple and easy to use too. So unless you're looking to only use a web developer and pay a lot for a web developer, all the time. One of the nice things to do about Wix is maybe have a web developer make your website, but then you can manage it from there.
Yeah, I thought that was great. I'm glad you kind of touched on a little bit more, because I think that sometimes, like you said, from a while ago, like people kind of got like a crinkle on their face from Wix or WordPress, but I'm glad we kind of explained why that's not, why it is intuitive and why it's helpful for small businesses, and the transferring and everything like that. That makes it a better choice, especially if you're a smaller business or a nonprofit and you need to kind of hand it off to you. So, talking about, I know I said like a rookie route of self-promotion, but the reason why I'm saying that, not only because, it definitely, there's a lot of statistics that show the traction in your engagement. It doesn't really go up from this very much over time, or your followers, because you want to instead there's 3 rules of thumb. You want to be informative, interactive, and responsive with your audience. And because it builds up trust and your reputation with your industry. And unfortunately, at this day and age in social media, too much self-promotion is just adding to the ad clutter that we have really learned to tune out on a day-to-day basis. We're just not as receptive to ads as we once were. And it's, it kind of can hurt your feelings when you hear this, because I know how much time and energy people put into their social media and their graphics and their posts, but people usually ignore content that they don't find to be interesting or helpful to themselves. So a way to combat this is you just need to balance out your self-promotion with more valuable information to your audience. And when I say valuable information, people have a lot of questions in any industry that they need to be answered. And you could provide these. You could be seen as that leader and more of like a reputable source, because we have Google. I mean, I can Google anything now on my phone, but we really like to have the reassurance now of having it answered by somebody, no matter what. I mean, we have so much information now. People want it to be answered by professionals in this industry. So not only does this build trust in your audience and just give you a better reputation, it gets people actually engaging with your posts better and sharing them and liking them and commenting on them. So it's a win-win. You get a better look for yourself just overall in the industry. And then it also boosts your posts you're just going to get more engagement and way more traction from this by being helpful, by being informative, and definitely more interactive with your audience. And once we think about our audience and what the ideal customer really looks like for us, and how we can help them, like as an industry leader, we also really need to think about where they're spending the majority of their time. Because if you do all of the work on figuring out what they like and how you can help them, you still need to figure out where day to day they are spending the most of their browsing. And there is so many statistics. I know I already pulled up a lot, but there's so many statistics on social media, but I wanted to pluck a few that I think illustrates why, platform research and figuring out where they're spending the most of their time is really important. So from Facebook, you can see it's definitely more of an adult dominated platform. 77% of Facebook users are between the ages of 30 and 49. And, 69% of US adults use it and have used it in the last month. It's definitely not an app that's just kind of sitting on their phone. They don't really open it very much and like they can't even remember their login. It's definitely not the case. It's definitely being actively used, and by not Gen Z. It's definitely by an older generation for the most part. Instagram is definitely more of I would say the middle ground for a lot of these apps. In January of 2022, the dominant group was ages 25 to 34, and then the second trended down an age group from 18 to 24. So it's definitely more of a middle ground than I would say Facebook is. But then in stark contrast to that, if we look at these TikTok statistics, they're very different. TikTok is absolutely a younger generation dominated platform for sure. And, from the ages of, I think 10 to 19 is crazy to see illustrated, but it's true. It's the new kid on the block with platforms and everything like that. Even though it is several years old at this point, we saw a huge boom with the pandemic, and it's definitely safe to say that it is a younger population dominated one, and it is female dominated, which is important for certain organizations, possibly like the Alliance for Infants and Toddlers. A lot of moms looking up stuff, looking up services for their children. But in contrast to that to LinkedIn, it's known as the professional network, and it has a great reputation. I mean, we saw a huge increase in purchase intent from ad exposure on LinkedIn because it has that kind of reputation. It's trustworthy. And a lot of the articles people post for LinkedIn, there's a lot of good organic website traffic that comes from them. So say if Donnelly-Boland was posting an article on tax season to LinkedIn, I would see a good amount of engagement coming and people clicking that and going to my website, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. And that's why we use LinkedIn. I also want to use Donnelly-Boland as an example between two of these platforms. So based on these findings, let's say between TikTok on one end and then Facebook on the other, for our industry, we do all back office services, but primarily we are an accounting firm. What audience do you think would have more of our typical clients on it? It's definitely Facebook, without a doubt, we can safely say. So strategy-wise for our department, our department has 3 people in it right now. What would make sense for us to spend more of our time and effort on as a whole? It would definitely be Facebook. It would not make sense for me to spend a lot of my time per week curating TikTok videos, like doing the learning curve, learning the trends, the transitions and the filters and everything like that. It just doesn't make sense as a whole. I would be way better off spending time on maybe a more high quality article for Facebook, something I can use to post to LinkedIn, anything along those lines. Spending more time on Facebook is just way more effective for us as an organization. And I go over this because we see a lot of instances, especially with clients, when people are being overwhelmed or burnt out because they try to jump onto the new trendiest platform, or they try to stretch themselves too thin and they try to do too many platforms at once, and they're putting way too much time in. Not only by doing too many platforms, they're spending a lot of time with platforms that are very content specific. I can't really use something from Facebook for TikTok. TikTok is specific. I have to do a whole video just for that one, and it's just eating up more of my time. And then besides being burnt out and overwhelmed, my audience isn't on TikTok. So sometimes you're doing too much for no traction at all.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we've had a lot of clients come in and ask the question, well, shouldn't my idea be to cast a wide net? Because I don't exactly know where my organization is going to fall. And my response to that is you really, really need to focus on one thing first and then build out from there. Especially startup businesses, a lot of times what happens is they're like, oh, we've got a great idea. We're going to be on 7 different social media platforms. And they want to do long content on YouTube, and they want to do really short, pithy content on Twitter, and they want to do, the emerging sounds that are trending on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
That's all great, cool. But to do things like that, you're going to have a tremendous amount of time and dedication of effort and resources to make that happen. And, I just, in my experiences, business have a laundry list of things to do, and their social media is never at the top of their list day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out. So if that's the case, instead of trying to do 20 things pretty bad, try to do one thing really well and then build out from there. It makes it a lot easier.
Take smaller bites. It's okay to take smaller bites. So we want you to be optimistic, of course. And it's great that we have so many ideas and people are eager to jump on social media and they see the significance and the importance of it. But, like Matt said, it requires way more time than people think. So definitely starting out a little bit smaller, doing a little bit more research on where your audience is actually using the most of their time on their phones every day on a day-to-day basis. That's when you're going to see the most success. So, like I said, when you're choosing the right platforms, just to start out, take these two things into consideration and they will never lead you wrong. Just think about realistically, how much time does your team have to dedicate? Utilizing more platforms just for the sake of covering more ground. While it's great and it's optimistic, it may not be more efficient for you, and it just may not give you a better return on investment. Some platforms take way more time than others, and they're very content specific. And then there's maybe a very little percentage of your audience is even on it. And then you really need to think about your industry and just figuring out where your ideal customer spends most of their time on a day-to-day basis is going to save you so much time, and it will save you money. And I actually want to resort back to the chat before I move on to the next slide. And off the top of your head, even if you're downsizing from what you're involved in your social media at your organization and you're doing more than this, I want you to answer in the chat pod, how many platforms do you realistically think that your company needs to be on? 2. I was going to agree right with Matt. 2. It's a great number to start with. Good. 2. I've seen a lot of 2s. Yep. And every industry is different. For my industry, for an accounting firm, it's better for us to be more on 2 platforms, or it's better for us to be on Facebook and LinkedIn, but not every industry is the same. So you can't take, okay, Facebook and LinkedIn is the best. For me, it may not be the best for your industry. And that's why really evaluating what platform is going to ring true for you is the best. So once we have everything laid out and we have some goals put into place and we have our platforms laid out and ready, we've redefined how our clientele has shifted over the past couple of years, we finally get to content. And there's several things I want to really reiterate with content. Of course, the first one is going to be building your content calendar out. But this means identifying the pillars you have. And by pillars, I mean, what do you already have a lot of content on? Or do you have a lot of self-promotion already? Okay, so if we do, maybe we need to identify our pillars and figure out what we need to promote more of, or maybe how we need to be more informative and valuable. We need to do more of that content over self-promotion. How do you designate the time for this? This is more, well, it's simple. It does take a good amount of time in your department. And then how to think about timely content for your industry and when quantity versus quality matters, and then saving some time with scheduling features. But there are several scheduling feature consequences that you might not be aware of. So like I said, with your pillars, you need to think about what content you already have, maybe a cache of. You have a lot of different graphics on self-promotion, and maybe you've already fallen into that trap of a little too much self-promotion. What type of content do we need to integrate? What valuable resources or information can we take? Maybe that just means, for me, it could be featuring more tax articles, maybe some common tax questions for individual filers. Maybe I start integrating more of that around March or February. A great first step. And just looking at these pillars as a whole and what you have, what you lack, will help you first build out your content calendar. And besides the time designation that you have allotted to your social media campaign in your company's budget, your team's time designation for your content is a huge part of this. And it's very important to create a robust and well-rounded, consistent campaign that's not going to become inactive. And it's hard because in marketing, especially in a small business or a nonprofit where you already have limited resources, I'm sure that you don't have too many people in your department and you have to wear several hats. At Donnelly-Boland, besides our own clients, we have to take care of everything under the umbrella for Donnelly-Boland. So when I say marketing and communications umbrella, I'm talking about anything that relates to it, which is our website development, our graphic design, our event planning, webinars like this, our social media, our newsletters, videos, photography, etc. It all falls under us. And while we love it, it can be time consuming and it can be stressful at times. So making sure that you implement small periods of time every week just to brainstorm, just to look ahead on your content and generate and add to your content calendar, fill in the gaps, is a great way to move away from being really sporadic and one-off posting on your page. Like I said, like the organization that they think that they have somebody that's in charge of their social media and they've designated it and it's all like done and taken care of. But in reality, they have event posts that are one every 3 or 4 months. That's leading to little traction. So what are you going to say, Matt?
I was going to just say, one of the things that Anna brings up that's just right on the mark, she's talking about sitting down and having a brainstorming about this. That's different than just saying every week go post online, because all that's going to do is that's going to get 1 day or 1 week's worth of posts done. But brainstorming can have the long-term effects. So if you start looking ahead at the next few weeks, the next few months, you're going to be able to start to develop content and develop that cohesion across all of your channels and all of your platforms and things like that. And I think that is much better than, I actually talked to a business owner once and said, oh, I've got social media handled. What I do is I schedule it on my calendar every week. I have a 30-minute time block out and I go online and I find something and then I post something. So every week I post. And then it's like, so you post just once a week? And yeah, well, that's enough for me. Okay, that's fine. But every week you're spending a half an hour to create 1 post. Whereas if you have these brainstorming sessions, you can start batching content and you can start getting things out. You can get out a lot more in a lot less time.
For sure. And even if it's not a lot of time every week, I know your time's limited. Make sure that you're still integrating those brainstorming sessions, like Matt said, because so many of us fall into the trap. We're only doing 1 post every few weeks or every few months, but it's not good because right now with our algorithms, people bury posts a lot. A lot of sites tend to do this unless you are doing paid ads or you're boosting posts, which, it's not too much money, but you can get around this very easily just by being more consistent and posting more frequently. You get a better chance of showing up on people's feeds on a more regular basis with the more you post. And I think a good point to add too is it doesn't have to be too overwhelming. And this isn't to say just look up a stock photo once a week, like Matt said, that, where you do that half-hour slot and you're just picking something to pick it. No, that's not what I mean by doing free resources, but filling in gaps sometimes when you need them with stock photo sites. There's so many free resources, more than I listed here. With Pexels is a good example. Unsplash is a good one too. They're free of copyright, free to use. Using these when you need them is okay. Sometimes you need to fill in the gaps. Don't use them every week though with little thought in your very small gap that you gave yourself to kind of hastily post something on your page. So definitely use those though when you need. I want to get into another example for this slide specifically. So let's say that you are managing maybe your dad's car shop's social media. You're in charge of it and you live it's centered in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So we have awful winters. Instead of doing self-promotions 100% of the time, you should show how you are seasoned in your industry and try to build some trust and reputation with your audience. And a good way to do this would be posting informative videos or content on how your company operates in your industry. So a good example would be in winter months, maybe you start posting a couple more videos on winter car care, Pittsburgh winters salt care for your car. It's a huge one. Maybe some winter tire recommendations. You know, focusing on that topic and making it timely is better than trying to cover everything in your industry at once. Focusing on timely topics for more of an extended period of time is going to leave more of a lasting effect on your customers rather than trying to information overload them. I think that this is a topic where quality is going to reign over the quantity of your posts. Being more timely, being more helpful, rather than doing more posts just for the sake of more posts per page. It's just going to get you better engagement and traction overall. You know, winter tire recommendation post in November is going to get way better traction than something very general.
Anna, we have a pretty good question here. What do you use to make your posts? So like what platforms do you use to make your posts?
So we use several different platforms here. We work with Adobe to make our posts, but we also use Canva. I think that's also a great resource. And then, like I said, sometimes, you know, we do filter in when we need, or I need to get the backbone of a graphic or something like that. Use some stock photos. Stock photos are not anything to be afraid of, or I think some people kind of turn their nose up at them. Give yourself a little bit of grace and give yourself something to build on, and then use it in like those softwares I just talked about. I don't know if Matt, you had any other recommendations besides those, but I think those are our top two are definitely.
No, I think that for people who understand graphic design and are a little bit more sophisticated with things, having the Adobe software, Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, if you're making movies, Premiere, those are critical for your success. However, if you're kind of dipping your toe in the water, you're kind of doing a DIY, using something like Canva is, again, a good option. It's very, very intuitive, pretty easy. They have an app online to use for it. I'm sorry, on your phone, so you can even make some posts on your phone. So I do think that is a viable solution too. I think that the more customizable is definitely the Adobe software, but Canva is a good option.
Canva is great bang for your buck. It definitely helps you get creative, but yes, exactly like Matt said, when you're a little further along, maybe in your journey, Adobe is going to be way more customizable, and you do overall get to do a lot more editing with the Adobe suite. And then you have Premiere if you're doing video editing, which, you know, we do here. I'm going to edit this video after we're done today. But even besides Canva, there's a lot of other softwares out there that are pretty intuitive to use and very easy to start with. When we first spoke on content calendars, you know, I've reiterated so many times the importance of setting aside time on a routine basis for your brainstorming, actually generating that content and scheduling it out. But when you have timely news or breaking news in your industry, it's really important to get content out on it sooner than later. And Matt kind of reminded me of this quote yesterday, like, don't let great get in the way of good. This is an instance where I think that quality does not it doesn't overpower quantity. Generating something more quickly to cover a buzzed on topic in your industry that's really timely, it's really time sensitive, it's way more important than spending way too much time on a graphic that you're pairing with it, and possibly missing your window of opportunity. And I think a good example would be talking about Donnelly-Boland does all back office services. So we offer human resources services for our clients. And working in that field during the height of the pandemic, like way when we were in the thick of it in 2020, they had so many changes day to day that were being announced on protocol, state mandates, paid sick leave changes, et cetera. Like the list went on, and it was so confusing, and it was such a different landscape at the time. So many people had questions that they needed answered, and they weren't really, no one was trusting certain things that they were Googling. Does this apply to my state? Does this apply to my employer? So ensuring that you don't miss the engagement window for these things is way more important than how your graphic paired with it looks, I would say. And this was a time where, while it was a scary, daunting time for all of us, we had so much traction on our pages because we were posting on these changing mandates, these changing protocols. How are the laws changing for your sick leave and whatnot? So when I talk about the window of opportunity, I would say you want to post within like 1 to 2 days of the announcement or act being put into place or this breaking news. With how much information and how much flooding we have on each social media channel, the chances of organic engagement on your post are going to go down with every day that you wait to post it, because the topic's already exhausted at that point. Other people are posting on it. People are getting their questions answered, and so on. So it's most important to get it out sooner than later, so you can answer questions, and then people are going to start seeing you as a resource and come back to you, when they have more questions, for sure. And I wanted to just kind of illustrate and give you a visual on what a content calendar can really look like for your organization. And I think that, I think that I was talking about platforms and how like 2 is a great number to start out with. Obviously, every industry is different, but for us, 2 was a great platform number for Donnelly-Boland to start out with. I think that starting out with 3 posts a week for your organization is a great way to not get overwhelmed with work. And it works great for all platforms, with the exception of Twitter. But Twitter is a completely different animal, and we could do an entire different hour-long presentation on Twitter and those algorithms. So rule of thumb for everything else, though, 3 posts a week is great. It just shows too how minimalistic and simple that a content calendar can really be. And while it's still so valuable and such a great tool to give you a bird's eye view on how you're doing as a company, where to fill in gaps. So with those gaps, when you have spent time on good quality, like timeless pieces, you can repeat them on your timeline and fill in some of those gaps you're seeing where you don't, tax season's over. We don't have really many promotions going on right now. We don't really have any breaking news. I don't really know what to fill in for the certain week. You can repeat some posts that had good traction. They were good traction, good quality pieces that you've already shown, and they got good traction on your page. You can repeat them because the algorithm we have now is so changing, and there's really little likelihood that somebody is going to see the same post twice. So quality pieces, don't be afraid to bring them out again and repeat them. And to save yourself more time, besides filling in gaps when you need to, think about using a scheduling feature. I mean, there's free ones out there like Facebook. And I actually want to ask quickly in the chat, has your organization used the scheduling feature or app before? Yes or no? Yes, no, okay. A couple more seconds for some people to answer. Thanks. So we have some mixed answers in there, but these are important because when you have finalized your content calendar and you've put all this work and research into it on your different platforms, the content you want to integrate, the last battle is scheduling these and remembering to get them out there, or just remembering to in the first place. Besides Facebook, I mean, I have an example of Facebook here. This is in the business suite. When you manage a business page, your business suite is on the left tab on the columns, and it shows what you already have published, what you have scheduled, and it's really intuitive to use. It lets you schedule up to 6 months in advance. I really highly recommend it, and they do have dual posting now with Instagram. Besides this, there's so many scheduling apps that are on the market right now. Hootsuite is an example, Social Pilot, Buffer. There's so many different ones that you can find in the App Store, but not everyone is free or as customizable as you might think. So it's really important to do some research on what app you want to get into and how it might actually help you. So like I said, Facebook, free, 6 months in advance, great tool. And it's okay because it is for one platform. So I don't have to worry about, unless I want to schedule it to Instagram as well, I don't have to worry about being content specific for other platforms because it's just one. A lot of people are really eager to jump onto scheduling apps because they think it's going to be the end all be all. Press one and done. I have all of my posts scheduled out for all of the platforms are on. But this has a significant consequence to it because, besides price, some of these are expensive. I think that some people would be very surprised at the monthly cost and subscriptions of some of these scheduling apps, and it's per person. So it's definitely not the cheapest thing to integrate into your business plan for your social media. But besides that, a lot of these apps don't allow you to customize the content per platform. So while getting one post out to several different platforms at once seems great, it can actually hinder you because they're not customized. A lot of the captions and posts you're going to use for Facebook really are not going to be suitable for maybe Instagram, for example. I mean, I think we've all seen somebody post a hyperlink to Instagram that's in the caption, and then you can't click on it, and you always think like, oh, sometimes it's a recipe I want to see. A lot of the times I go to look for it, and then I go to the bio to look for it, and then I notice that they put the hyperlink for their blog in the caption. I can't click on it. So, it's not helpful. It really doesn't lead any traffic, any organic traffic at all. So it's important to do your research on which one of these features will allow you to do full customization and how much they cost. Is it even worth it at the end? So I would say Hootsuite is a really popular one, but it is pricier and it only allows the same caption and post for all platforms that you're posting to. So sometimes the grass is not always greener on the other side. And while I wrap up here, because I know that we have about 5 minutes left, so I want to have some time for questions. If you take anything away from today, I want you to take 3 takeaways from the whole presentation. And they will be establishing your goals, putting measurable goals into place to come back and reevaluate, defining your audience, possibly again, seeing how your clientele has changed over the years, and seeing where they're spending most of their time on platforms on a day-to-day basis. And then creating a content calendar. You just need to create one. No matter how simple it is, it will put you light years ahead on your entire social media campaign. And we have time for questions now. If anybody has not answered one yet in the chat pod or has anything really specific that they want to talk about, even if it's really like niche, please bring it up. We would love to answer it, and we have a little bit of time left to do so.
While I give people an opportunity to ask anything they would like to in the chat pod, I just wanted to say that our next 2 sessions are going to be May 19th, and that's an HR 101 seminar. If you're a small business, you don't have HR in place, or you do, but you don't know how great it is, you don't know what's up with your I-9 forms in compliance, do you have an employee handbook, anything like that, that's going to be covered in that session. That's May 19th at 9 a.m. And then also on June 7th at 9 a.m., we have an accounting seminar. And that's just another opportunity for us to learn a little bit about, like, what are you doing in the day-to-day? Are you using QuickBooks? How are you tracking things? Are you tracking things appropriately? Is your bookkeeping the most stress that you have? Really what we try to do with these seminars, we've been doing them for a number of years now. We're just trying to make sure that we get across information that you want to hear, that is valuable to you. That's really that's why we create these. That's why we do these things. So you're also going to be getting a survey after this. And it's going to say, hey, what did you like about today's survey? What did you want to see differently? And what types of sessions would you like to see in the future? Please take a few minutes to respond to those. Those would help us out immensely because that helps us with programming.
We actually do check them.
Yeah, and so I think that's a good opportunity for everybody, because we then are making our programming based on what people actually want to hear. And then within that email that you're going to get, the recap email, there's going to be a link to this so that you can actually view all of this session again. If, hey, what did she say about that? What was that site to get free pictures from? If you want to go back, you have the opportunity to do that. There's also going to be a little link in there to give us a Google review. If you found today's session superb and you just loved it so much and you would be willing to give us a Google review for that would be awesome, because that helps us gain some exposure. Right now, I'm not seeing anything in the chat. So what we're going to do is we are going to end today's session formally, but we'll stick around here for a couple minutes in the event that anybody wants to hear or see anything. If you have issues and questions about your social media in the future, we're here. We have a department dedicated to this, and we're eager and ready to help. So if you have a one-off question and you want to email us, go for it. If you actually need support and you want us to do an audit of your social media, we can provide that type of support for you. We truly and honestly appreciate you all being here. We thank you for taking your time out. And look at that time, 9:59. It's almost like I said we were respectful of people's time. So thank you all for being here, and hope to see you at a session in the future.
Thank you, everybody.